Welcome to Health Systems CIO's interview with Maria Sexton, CIO at the University Medical Center of Southern Nevada. I'm Anthony Guerra, founder and editor-in-chief. Maria, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Anthony. It's great to be here.
All right, excited for a fun chat. You want to start off by telling me a little bit about your organization and your role?
Certainly. So, as you mentioned, I'm the Chief Information Officer at University Medical Center of Southern Nevada, or as we lovingly and locally call it, UMC. UMC is a large healthcare system here in Southern Nevada. We are a 541 bed acute care hospital. We have clinics throughout the valley, primary care, urgent care, specialty clinics. We are the state's only level one trauma, the state's only level two peds trauma. We have a center for transplantation, a burn care center, and we're the oldest hospital healthcare system in the valley. We've been around for more than 90 years.
Okay, very good. All right, so you've got an interesting past, and we'll sort of touch on that, and I'll tell you why. Now, this is going to be a security focused interview,
Sure.
and so you have a lot of security experience. You were the information security officer, um, and things like that. So very strong security background, but now the CIO. And I don't know if you have a CISO, so that's something interesting we can talk about. But just a little bit about your background, and I am interested in. I'm seeing a lot more of this trend from sort of an infrastructure to security to CIO role
Right.
pipeline
Mhm.
because of the importance of security. I think it's pretty clear. But just tell me a little bit about your sort of journey, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So, gosh, it seems like 1,000 years ago, but it was just about 30 years ago. I started in IT, kind of as a lot of people do, on a help desk. And I started in my career in 1996, interestingly enough, the same time the internet came into being. So, it was sort of a great time to be in technology at that time. So, I started in IT, again, in help desk. I started doing desktop support and things like that. But before I'd gotten my first job in IT, I was not in technology at all. I was working as a secretary, but I was looking for something more lucrative in terms of a career path. And so while I was working as a secretary, I went to school and over a year obtained both my certified netware engineer, remember back in the Nobel days, certified netware engineer certification, and my MCSE, my Microsoft Certified System Engineer certification. So I had a lot of paper, but not a lot of experience. So right, remember what they called them back then: paper CNEs, paper MCSEs, and so I had the paper, but not really the background. But at least I showed an aptitude for technology, and so I got my first job on the help desk, and really kind of cut my teeth there. And I think from there, just sort of through my career, it was just lots of opportunities. And I hate to call it luck, right? It's when experience meets opportunity. And so I moved to Las Vegas and had an opportunity to join a contractor for the federal government here. There's a lot of government presence in Nevada, and had the opportunity to move from help desk into more of a network and systems engineer role. But that's where I got the introduction to security. Remember, again, this is early days. This is when security is still being done by network and security people and systems people. There is no security as an industry. So, I happen to be at work one day. And one of my system engineer peers says, you know what, I need a second for security. I'm on call all the time. I have to do all the work. Who's interested? Raised my hand. That was 98, 99. And I started doing firewall work, intrusion detection, antivirus, again, early days. But that was my first exposure to security. And then through my career, I've just kept one leg in one side and one leg in the other. I've had many roles as director of IT or, like you said, infrastructure positions, and then roles as director of global security operations or running information assurance type organizations. So throughout my career, I really kept that, again, sort of straddling both sides, the leg in IT and the leg in security, which has allowed me then to continue through my career as ISO, as director of IT, sometimes as both, many times as both. And then when the opportunity here at UMC came up for the CIO, I was in a perfect spot. I was able to take over. I had lots of years of experience, if not decades of experience in traditional IT, the operational side, but almost as many years in security too. And as you mentioned, for a long time, I was the ISO here, even here at UMC, and had a team. But just last October, I was able to promote one of my leaders into the ISO role. So even though security still rolls up to me, operationally, I have an ISO now that runs security. But it was very, I have to tell you, Anthony, it was very intentional to stay in both sides. And as you said, if you grow up with IT, you sort of have that infrastructure background, which really just strengthens you as a cybersecurity practitioner. You have
Yeah,
to
very.
understand, I would say,
Go
right, you
ahead.
always have to, I'm just sorry, you have to kind of understand how the bits move, and you have to understand how things run and how they operate on a workstation or on a server in order to secure it. My belief, my belief.
Right. So that's network and infrastructure, but would you say even sort of a rung, I hate to say below, but even a rung below that is the help desk. I mean, coming up through the help desk, is that sort of the bottom rung on the ladder? And I mean that in a very positive way, that if you have spent time, if you start out at the bottom,
Yeah,
when you do get to the top, you have obviously a super rich and deep appreciation for
right.
almost every role. So the help desk, you're going to have sympathy. You're going to know what they're going through, and you're not going to be like, well, just do it and have no clue.
Right. You're 100% right. So I say this with absolute sincerity. When I worked on the help desk, that was my favorite job of all the jobs I've had in my almost 30-year career. I am very customer service oriented. And what I loved about the way that my very first job, I was so fortunate. The way it worked was half of the time I spent on the phones and half of the time I spent on the floor, right, going to the customer. And it is incredible the communication skills that you develop when you're trying to help a customer over the phone, right? Click here, point there, look for that icon. And then when you're at the desk side with that customer, they want to get back to work. They don't have a lot of patience. They don't necessarily want to learn about IT. They just want you to fix the problem. And so I really credit that first job in really helping me, like you said, one, to develop an empathy and an understanding for our customer, and I say that intentionally. You might be wondering, I don't call the people that we support here users. That's a very, in my mind, a very derogatory term. They are our customers. We are their service provider. So you really develop a great skill in terms of how you communicate, how you interact with customers over the phone or in person. And then, like you said, the help desk, they are the hub. They know everything that's happening, right? New systems that are going live, problems our customers might be having, things that they might be getting a hint of that's starting to escalate in the environment. So it's a very important role, and again, it was probably one of my favorites given the interaction with the customer. I don't have as much of that now as the CIO. I do, but it's at a higher level, right? So I'm very intentional again about making sure I'm still talking to our line level employees and making sure technology is working for them. What I say here all the time at UMC is, on the other side of every phone call, every ticket, every issue is a patient. We don't directly support patients. We support those who support our patients.
Hmm.
So we are interacting with a nurse or a provider or a rad tech or an EVS worker. It doesn't matter. On the other end of that is a patient and their family. And that's who we're here to serve.
Yeah. We're talking about the help desk and interacting with customers.
Mhm.
Um, it seems to me that if you have aspirations of working at a higher level position, let's say you're in cyber or even IT and whatever, and you
Right.
have grand aspirations of that C-suite role someday, or VP or director.
Sure.
Um, I would think there's sort of two worlds. There's the world where you speak to human beings, and that's going to get you eventually to that higher position. And
Mhm.
there's the world where you're pure tech, maybe network, you could be brilliant, but you don't talk to a lot of customers. I don't know if you're ever going to get up there if you don't know how to interact with people and talk to people, because these are often our customers, are
Right.
very educated, the most educated people in our society, high level, can be impatient, not the easiest people sometimes to deal with, especially when they're irritated or annoyed or being slowed down in their perception. So
Right.
I just think that that's another great reason to want to spend time on the help desk, or
Mhm.
to make sure, if you want to move up, you have to make sure you're interacting with your end users. That should be one of your goals in your career development, because that's going to eventually help you get to that higher level.
I think that's a great point, Anthony, and you're absolutely right. I think back in the day, and I remember even probably uttering these words myself, to all people in IT that I might have been leading, director, manager, CIO, whatever, and saying, things like you're going to have to, again, like you said, interact with the customer and improve your communication skills and all of that. But I think now we really have gotten to the point where the industry is so large, both security and IT, and there are so many different opportunities to be a practitioner that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. But to your point, right, to your point, you sort of have to be honest with yourself and say,
Mm,
well, if I am the person, right, who does like to interact with inanimate objects and I'm not comfortable speaking with people, right, then that's okay. But your career, to your point, may be limited, and that's okay. If you ever look at those 9 box things where you assess an individual, okay, you're always going to be a very strong individual contributor. And there is nothing wrong with coming to work every day, doing a great job, and going home. So I think at a certain point, you're right. I mean, I don't know why, we kind of look at that in IT, but we've really here at UMC in my division, we've been very intentional about identifying if you're someone who is comfortable interacting with customers, or like you said, maybe you're not, but you do aspire to be a CIO or a CISO or CEO, whatever that might be, then we're going to help you through that. But you're right. But you must be able to communicate. You must be comfortable speaking publicly, even if the public is 50 people, right, in a town hall.
mhm,
those
mhm.
those skills have to be there. So I think it is part of the, we used to call the soft skills, right? The professional development that's something other than technology. But there are some people that are very, very comfortable just behind the monitor and the keyboard, doing a great job every single day, and they don't aspire to take on, let's face it, the challenges of
Yeah.
being in a leadership position, right? It's not all corner office and, martini lunches.
No, but it should be. It should
Yes,
be. Yes.
especially in IT and security, it should be.
No, but I think you make some excellent points about people have different strengths in different areas, but you I think hit the nail on the head, which is if you do have C-suite aspirations, you have to learn how to get out from behind the computer.
You
If
do.
you
You do.
don't, and you're awesome at this one super high level skill, and you just bang it out, great.
Good for
We can
you.
use you too.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. You're killing it. You're making money. You're going home. You're living your life. Yeah, you're okay with that. But that's the honest conversation I think sometimes leaders don't have. Right. And you have to have
yeah.
that honest conversation. Do you have the potential? Do you have the desire? Do you want to do that? If not, that's not a mark against you. But we're going to then turn our attention to this individual who does actually want to do that.
Right, and that's sort of I mean, I have heard thinking in the past, which I never kind of agreed with, of forcing people out of their comfort zone. That was a management
Oh,
theory, a leadership theory where I don't want to do that thing, but you
right.
think as my manager, part of your role is to make me expand my comfort zone. I don't want to go. I understand the cost they may have to me not going there. It may limit me in certain areas. I don't want to do it. But you're saying, well, I never agreed with that kind of thing.
I'm the same with you, Anthony. I
Yeah.
don't agree either. Why would we want to do something that, someone may want to get out of their comfort zone, but like you said, they've made an actual intentional decision. They've said, yes, I don't like speaking in front of
Right.
people, but put me in front of this group, I'll do a presentation. But yeah, why are we dragging people kicking and screaming
Right.
out of their environments they've chosen in order to, I don't know, fulfill something? I'm
Right.
100% with you.
Yeah, it's even by definition, right? So we've pulled you out of your comfort zone, so I've made you uncomfortable.
Right.
And now I think you're gonna be more effective now that you're
Right.
uncomfortable.
It's a
How
great point.
you
Yeah,
might
it's a
go
great
find somewhere else where you can be comfortable again and leave, right? So
yeah.
that's great. That's a lot of fun. All right. So you mentioned you have an ISO, which is a legal requirement, right? Someone has to be designated as the ISO,
Uh-huh.
correct? That's
Well,
different than having a CISO, right?
Well,
So
it is. I guess it is. I mean, it's the same. In our organization, we haven't really defined it as a chief level. So
uh
it could be a CISO or an ISO. I don't know. I mean, we do have to have somebody defined that is, overseeing our security
yeah.
operations. Excuse me. In the world of HIPAA, you do have to have a HIPAA privacy and a HIPAA security officer. Our ISO is the HIPAA, excuse me, the HIPAA security officer. So yes,
Yeah.
I do have that. But for a long time, I had both of those roles: director of IT and ISO, and then CIO and ISO. But I knew I did need to relinquish the operational responsibilities to someone else.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting to me. So, you I think you were interim, right? Interim CIO for a little bit,
For
and
a
then
couple
you
months. Yes, for a
couple
couple
months.
months.
Then you took the CIO role. So you come into a CIO role with a certain set of skills, like things you're really good at, right? And a certain areas where you may want to have strong partners. And everyone's different. So you come from security, so you're like, I don't really need a CISO, but I want someone to head up security, but I don't need a CISO. If you had a CIO who had come up as an MD, they might think, well, I don't need a CMIO, but I sure as hell need a CISO. Um,
Sure.
so when you come into that position, there's an org chart. There's established positions that exist,
Hmm.
yet you may want to sort of customize the talent surrounding you in order to, again, work with
Hmm.
your strengths and areas you want support. Tell me
Right.
how that works and how that's played out in your thoughts.
In terms of my ISO role,
Not
kind of
it,
how
no,
I,
not your in general. So you're CIO now.
yeah.
You maybe say, I want to make sure we
Hmm.
have a strong CMIO. Or you might say that if you don't have a CMIO role, you might say, I'm CIO now. We don't have a CMI role. I think that'd be a great role to add. You're
Gotcha.
not coming in saying, I need a really strong CISO role because you're
Mhm.
very strong in security. So it's
Yep.
all about building out that totality of the IT universe. And
Hmm.
I interviewed another CIO the other day who came up from security, and
Yeah.
we had this kind of conversation. And he's like, "Yeah, I had areas I wanted, to bring in some strength to support me, and
Hmm.
areas I was really comfortable." So
Right.
anyway, that makes
Okay.
sense.
That does make sense. So,
Yeah.
it's interesting that you asked that question. Again, in a long career and one that very early on I had been very purposeful about wanting to eventually get to a CIO position. And so early in my career, I had determined that I was not, a gifted engineer. I was great operationally, but I was not going to be that great network engineer, systems engineer. So I started developing my skills to get into leadership. And
Uh-huh.
so again, was very thoughtful and purposeful about that. But I remember saying, even to myself and to my husband, who's also in IT, I said, you know what? When I eventually get to that CIO role, that top role, whatever that is, I am going to build the organization that I want,
Right.
of the individual contributors, of the leaders. And so when I came into the CIO role, again, because I have so much IT and security, these weren't really two areas where I thought, okay, I'm coming in with a bit of a gap. And I hope that doesn't sound like I'm full of myself. It's just that I've had a lot of experience. I've done a lot of things. One area that I really did need to be very intentional about in ensuring, that we did have a strong leader is in our electronic health record side of the house. So we are an Epic shop. We've been
Hmm.
Epic since 2017. Very proud. We're just so blessed to have this wonderful EHR. But that was an area that I don't have a lot of experience in. So that was an area where, although I had done tremendous amounts in IT and security, I needed to make sure that I brought in a leader and he created or developed a leadership team to make sure that he could help me and that we could fully understand the capability of Epic, how it was serving our customers, what we could do with it. So that was one very, very much, I put a lot of thought in that. The other area that I brought in a director is our director of data management and analytics. So this individual came from finance. And so I brought him over into IT, promoted him into a director position, and he has everything data. So he's doing programming, business intelligence, analytics, reporting, database administration, interface management. And so that was an area, again, too, where I had some experience, but not business intelligence, not analytics, right? Not big data. And so he has done a wonderful job in that because let's face it, everything is data driven now.
Hmm.
I think for a long time here at UMC, we didn't really realize the jewel that we had in terms of all the data we have because of how long we've been around. But those were two areas. So security, I'm very strong. My ISO is
Hmm.
very strong. I don't have any issues. My director of IT, very strong. I have an IT background, very strong. So those two I felt very comfortable. But I was making sure again and being very thoughtful about the leaders over EHR, electronic health records,
Hmm.
and over data management and analytics. And so I have a great management team again that run each of their towers, if you will, or departments, and so that we can fully support the hospital in all aspects.
Yeah, that you perfectly answered the question, and you understood exactly what I'm trying to get at. It's that when you start, it's I guess having the necessary flexibility built into the role or the expectations that leadership has about, hey, I might want to move some things around, or
Sure.
I want to create this role or want to get rid of this role or whatever to work to create the best constellation of talent around me,
Yeah.
considering what I bring to the table, so we have that complete,
Right.
we have everything
You,
covered.
Anthony, it's interesting too, because I have to imagine a lot of people that finally get to this role or any role, your role, others are very type A, right? In the
Yeah.
sense of really, right? Like to control things, really like to sort I mean, you kind of have to be that way. I think if you're passive and sort of a wallflower, you're probably not going to get to these levels because it takes a lot,
Oh,
right? It really takes a lot of right of commitment and that strength. So it's hard to relinquish that. I'm not, because I would be lying if I stood here and said it was very easy to have to delegate that. But to your point, in order to be successful in the role and to be successful with the organization that you're leading, you have to be able to recognize I'm good at these things, but I'm going to need some people in here that are really good at those other things. And then together, we're all successful.
absolutely great point. And even the things you're good at, you may not necessarily, maybe some of those at a more granular level, you shouldn't be doing anymore in order to properly execute your new role. And
Yep.
therefore, you have to, and I'm just talking out loud here, you have to be comfortable with mistakes. And I find one of the best ways to be comfortable with mistakes is when I make one and remind myself that I'm not perfect. As much as we're type A and
Right.
then we get everything right, when I make a mistake, it's like, oh, yeah,
Yes.
it's
Yes.
okay to make mistakes.
You are so right. And that's so true. That's right. That you're absolutely right. That not only do you bring in those strong leaders that then can run their own,
Hmm.
respective areas in order to run, a good operation,
Hmm.
but you're right. And then it gives you that time to be able to do the strategic work.
Yeah,
And I have to say that was a bit of a challenge getting out of operations. Again, I've been in operations for a long time, whether it be security or IT. It's an area of strength for me, and it's an area that I naturally, fall back into. But
of
I've been the
course.
CIO here for almost 4 years, and what I didn't know about this role, right? You sit on the outside looking in and think it's this and that, and once you get on the other side and you really see what it is, it's a whole new learning and development path, in terms of, again, relinquishing some of the operational responsibilities, understanding strategy, the business, the finance. It's just amazing what I've learned in the last 4 years that I again, from the outside looking in, before I was a CIO, I thought, oh, I can do that. That's just director of IT on steroids, right? And it is so not that. It is so not that role.
Well, that's really interesting. Can you give me any more color for for the directors out there that
Yeah.
are aspirational to that role? What would your best advice be to them if to prepare for that role? Things they should start maybe trying to learn about, meetings they should maybe request if they could just sit in and just I just want to sit here and I'll be quiet and I won't say
Right.
anything, but I just want to hear. I don't know. What are your thoughts there?
No, Anthony, you couldn't be more spot on. So, like I said, before I was the CIO here, I was the director of IT and the ISO, and I had communicated to my boss at the time, the CIO, I intend to sit in your chair one day. Not in, not before you're ready to go. Obviously, I don't want to make it
You
probably sound a little
clarified.
probably sound a
Yeah.
little threatening, but
Yeah.
and then he decided to retire, and so it came a little faster than I had
Hmm.
intended. Anyway, it all worked out, and I got into it. I would say that one of the biggest things that I'd learned, and this is something I've been saying for a while now, is it's not IT and the business. It's only the business.
Mm,
I think that in a way in IT, we have somehow sort of relegated ourselves to these roles where we're like satellites buzzing around the organization and we're only called in when they need, a new computer or something happens and then we buzz back out again. And I think that if we speak that way, then in the minds of the stakeholders, the business leaders, right, they do think of us. We're just the commodity. We just make sure the computers are on. We're not part of the building and the execution of the strategy of the organization. So if I were talking to myself 5 years ago, or maybe to, talking to directors of IT or directors of security that aspire to these roles, you must understand the business you're in, right? I'm in healthcare. I'm not in IT. I think about this. I never hear the CFO say it's finance in the business. I never hear the chief nursing officer say it's nursing in the business. They speak the business because we are the business. And so for what I would say to anybody who's looking to get into this role is every opportunity that you can present yourself as a business leader with a technology background. You're not a technology leader unless you work in a technology company. And I know that's probably nuanced, but it's really important. It's the way we present ourselves. Again, if we say things like it's IT in the business, then we are actually saying we are separate from the business and we're not. So certainly make sure that, again, you're presenting yourself. I am a part of the business. I am, whether I'm a tactical leader or a strategic leader, right? Whichever role that I'm in, understand what business you're in, what matters to UMC. And it's not just the obvious. We deliver patient care. Well, of course we do. We're in healthcare. What matters? Do we have opportunities to grow market share? Where are they? What are we talking about in terms of where we're going to open clinics? Is there a service line that's suffering that we may need to, with technology, be able to help that service line grow, therefore increasing our revenue? Are there opportunities where technology can help decrease cost? You and I talk, because we've been doing this a while, and those sound natural coming off our tongues, but that's the language you speak. Never has my CEO, who's my boss, who I report to, asked me, what percentage of storage we're consuming, and what's our compute look like, and that they don't care. That's right. Those are table stakes. There's nothing that I'm ever going to talk to my peer chiefs, my boss, the board. So I would say, if anybody is thinking about it, anywhere that you can, you say committee meetings, ask to go to a staff meeting, right, of a business unit, and say, I'll present on technology. Can I sit in and listen to some of the problems that you're having? If you do that, you're going to start picking up on what their business challenges are. And then you'll kind of pick up again, too, on what their business is, right? Whether it's the pharmacy, it's radiology, it's cardiology, it's EVS, it's finance. And that's just not something I thought about. Again, my thought was, well, it's just being the director of IT, but on steroids, just more operational. It couldn't be more of a 180 from that.
I
And so, yeah, that's kind of what I would say to
I
anybody
think
thinking
you're
about it.
so right on. I think you're so right on. It's unbelievable. And my thoughts on what you were saying were, you never want to be in a position of waiting for them to call you
Right.
when they think, oh, let's call IT and see what, or we need IT for this, right?
Uh-huh.
You want to be in the conversation to be offering suggestions they didn't even think of. So there's a business problem they're dealing with, and you want to be in there to say, you know what, there's something out there that I've learned about that maybe, would be appropriate here.
Right.
Because if you don't do that, there are times they're never going to think of IT as being a possible solution to the problem they're dealing with, and then you're not really providing that high level value.
Exactly. Or all you do is create sanctioned shadow IT. They're going to
Oh
work
yeah,
around you, because if you don't come to the table, they'll ask their favorite vendor, and their vendor will say they have a technology solution. And then
right.
the next thing you know is you're getting this call and they're saying, we're implementing this system, but we don't need UMC IT. The vendor is helping us. Right. So I think it's one of those. But
Yeah.
again, I've been very, very, again, intentional. And I've used that word a lot because it's been a really important part of what I've been doing with my own self-development and professional development. Is it's we are the business. It's never what's
Hmm.
your business problem.
Yeah.
What's our
Hmm.
business problem? Every project is a UMC project. Every opportunity is a UMC opportunity or a challenge, right? I'm breaking even the things, again, where we speak about IT again as if it's just the satellite sort of buzzing around the earth and then they just kind of call us in when they need us. We have to be at those. Now, I would be lying to anybody who would be listening to this to say that that was easily done. It has taken me probably the better part of 18 months to 2 years of my 4-year CIO job
Hmm.
to break through. Now, I'm not saying every organization and every leadership team is like that. Some might be a little more advanced. Here, again, I'm coming in after a period of time of IT leaders that really did sort of treat IT as ticket takers. Just call us when you need something. We weren't called to the table when we were thinking about opening a new clinic, starting a new service line, doing something like that, where from the front we could say, these are the things we can do with technology. And maybe not just technology, maybe even we have some business ideas. I'm a patient too. I might say, well, you know what? I think our patients would do better if we did this. So
Hmm.
even the feedback doesn't necessarily have to be my own swim lane of technology.
Yeah.
I'm a business person too. So it's asking good questions, but it's taken a while to change the credibility and the, because remember, I was promoted from within. If I came from the outside as a CIO, maybe the reception would have been different. Do you know what I mean? But I
Hmm.
came as from the director of IT and ISO to the CIO. So it's hard to break people's perception of you.
Hmm.
They've only
Hmm.
known me this way. I
Hmm.
have to now show them a different. Maria.
A-
And that's all on me.
And you were also bringing a different dynamic to the CIO role. So not only are, it's both those things, which
Yep.
requires a lot of education and reorientation and getting people comfortable with what you're trying to do.
Right. Exactly. Right.
Yeah. We're almost out of time. We're actually at time. I'll ask you one more question and then I'll let you go. You mentioned the dynamic of being a type A personality, which, you're absolutely correct that when you get it, people who get into positions of responsibility and maybe have accomplished a few things are probably type A personalities because that's what it takes to get there.
Right.
Um, Leadership is interesting with a type A personality because it has to be somewhat modulated or modified.
Mhm.
When you're dealing with people, you need to sort of dial it back a notch or take it down a notch sometimes.
Sure.
And let's talk about that in terms of work-life balance and burnout, which is a huge thing, a real thing, especially in security, where you can be stressed all the time and be afraid you
Mhm.
haven't done enough, and the other shoe's about to drop. When we see the other shoe dropping all over the place, and we
Right.
just can be in this state of anxiety, waiting for our turn, in a state of never being able to step away and get a break and turn it off to refresh ourselves. How real is that for you and your team? How important is that on the things you think about, and how are you dealing with it?
You know what? Well, Anthony, it is very real. You're absolutely right. I mean, I don't think anybody had to tell us that healthcare was in the crosshairs of our adversaries. I mean, right? We've known that for some time now, and actually, it's public knowledge. About 3 years ago, we were the victims of a ransomware attack here at UMC, and I think as a security practitioner, you always know that day is coming. The day came, shed a few tears, did a few deep cleansing breaths, and then we got to work. I think it is a very real thing, but it's like anything, people that become police officers or firefighters or go into the military. It, it's certainly understanding the job you're going into, right? So I think you're sort of built for that. And if you're
Uh-huh.
not, then right, it's probably not a role you go into. Do you
Right.
live with the stress every day of, like you said, that proverbial, shoe that's going to drop, that will be attacked again? I mean, it's just the law of averages. Um, we make sure that our teams are ready, so we exercise a lot. We run our incident, response plan a lot so that they're comfortable. Even when we had our security incident, it wasn't about, punitive. It wasn't about being punitive. Who didn't do what, who dropped the ball. We're the victims, right? So we're dealing with that. So I think it's, again, of course, building an environment where, unless somebody has done something intentional, it's not punitive. We learn from all the things we do. We're constantly looking at our organization to see if we can improve. And I think part of it too is we have a reasonable assurance. We don't have an absolute assurance. No one has an absolute assurance that they're not going to be attacked, and if attacked, going to be able to fully defend themselves. It's not possible.
No.
The adversaries have more money, more time, no laws, no scruples, no policies. They will always be ahead of us. Our goal here is just to make sure the adversary is within sight.
Hmm.
We're not going to get ahead of them, but we can't lose sight of kind of what we're working towards. It's just a balance. And I think for my security team, they really like the fact that I have a security background, because there isn't having to come in and have to, tell me about that. But the stress is always there. But again, we have lots of type A's in security too. They went into these jobs eyes wide
Hmm.
open.
Hmm.
Right. So it's just really balancing that. But I think, again, it's an environment of support. We talk about things. It's not hair on fire. I'm
Yeah.
not screaming at people. This is what we do all day, every day.
Hmm.
When it happens, like it did 3 years ago and will happen again, keep calm. Let's just take care of things. Let's get the organization back to where it needs to be. And I have an incredibly supportive CEO and board, so that helps as well. It's a good relationship.
That's wonderful, Maria. It's a great place to end things today. I want to thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Anthony. This has been wonderful.